Imagine for a moment that you're lost, completely alone, surrounded by the fiercest predators on Earth. Your heart is pounding so hard it feels like it might explode. There's no escape, no help, just you, and death lurking at every step. Now multiply that feeling by 1,000, because you're just a 2-month-old baby, stranded in the most unforgiving African savanna imaginable. This is the true story of Casey, a baby elephant who faced the most terrifying experience of his young life, but also witnessed one of the most incredible miracles ever recorded. What happened next defied every law of nature we thought we understood. Because sometimes, when all seems lost, when hope slips through your fingers like sand, someone appears from the shadows. Someone unexpected, someone who changes everything you thought you knew about this wild, brutal world. The sun was beginning to set over Amboseli National Park in Kenya, painting the sky in a blood-orange hue that seemed to foretell what was about to happen. It was August 2019, and the drought that year had been especially cruel. Rivers had turned into dry scars across the cracked earth, and vegetation was so scarce that even the strongest animals struggled to survive. In this apocalyptic landscape, where death lingered at every corner, a herd of elephants moved slowly in search of water, following ancient routes their ancestors had walked for thousands of years. At the front was Temba, a 50-year-old matriarch known to the park rangers for her wisdom and leadership. Her yellowed tusks glowed under the golden sunset, and her small but intelligent eyes constantly scanned the horizon for danger. Behind her, 15 members of her family followed in perfect formation, adult females guarding their calves, adolescents learning the unwritten rules of survival, and in the very center, like a precious gem surrounded by Wario. First round, walk to Casey. Casey was barely 2 months old, yet already full of the curiosity typical of young elephants. His wide, expressive eyes watched everything with innocent fascination, from the few wildflowers left standing to the cheeky baboons leaping between the branches of the acacias. His little trunk, still clumsy and uncoordinated, tried to imitate his mother Nuru, who never strayed more than 2 meters from his side. Their bond was so strong that they seemed to move as one, breathing together, stopping together, walking together. But nature has its own cruel laws. That afternoon, as the herd approached a small oasis shimmering in the distance, fate began weaving a story no one could have predicted. The water gleamed like a tempting mirage about 500 meters away, surrounded by green grass and palm trees, a paradise in the middle of the arid hell that was the dry season savanna. Temba lifted her trunk and inhaled deeply. Something didn't feel right. Her instincts told her that a place that perfect could be hiding something deadly, but thirst was stronger than caution. The younger elephants quickened their pace, drawn by the promise of water. Casey, infected by the excitement, began to trot beside his mother, his little legs kicking up clouds of red dust. The air vibrated with a strange tension, as if the earth itself sensed that something terrible was about to happen. The birds had stopped singing. The insects had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then it happened. In a matter of seconds, the world turned to chaos. A deafening roar split the air, then another, and another. From the brush surrounding the oasis emerged 6 golden figures, muscular, powerful, their manes flowing like banners of war. A coalition of young, hungry male lions, desperate for an easy kill. They had been waiting, perfectly hidden, around the only waters. Our source for miles, knowing that sooner or later, some thirsty animal would stumble into their trap. Panic spread through the herd like wildfire. Temba trumpeted a command to retreat, a deep, gut-wrenching sound that made the ground tremble. The adult females immediately formed a defensive circle, tusks pointing outward like spears, while the calves huddled inside. But the chaos was overwhelming. The lions moved with military precision, cutting off escape routes and forcing the herd to scatter. Their strategy perfected: divide and conquer. In the confusion, amid roars and cries of terror, the unthinkable happened. Casey, terrified and disoriented, ran the wrong way. Instead of following his mother toward safety, he bolted straight toward danger. Nuru realized too late. When she turned, her baby was already 30 meters away, running blindly toward the lions. Their fangs bared, eyes burning with hunger,
and lethal intent. Time seemed to slow, like one of those nightmares where you try to scream but no sound comes out, where you run but your legs barely move. Nuru watched her baby drift farther, saw the lions closing in, and something inside her shattered. Her trumpet pierced the air, a cry of pure desperation, the sound of a mother about to lose what she loves most. She tried to reach him, but 2 lions blocked her path, forcing her to stop or face certain death. Kessie's little legs pumped as fast as they could, but for a baby elephant, even his fastest sprint was a slow trot compared to an adult lion. His breathing was erratic, tiny squeals of fear escaping his throat, his eyes wide and glistening with tears as he searched for his mother. The ground beneath him felt unstable, as if the earth itself was betraying him. Each step carried him farther from safety, closer to the end. Then, one of the lions, a young male with a fresh scar above his left eye, leapt. His body coiled like a spring and launched forward, covering over 20 feet in a single bound, kicking
Up a cloud of red dust. The roar that accompanied the attack was so powerful that even the distant birds scattered in fright. Kessie stumbled, fell, and rolled in the dirt, his tiny body covered in dust. The lion was just about to strike when a thunderous explosion of sound erupted nearby. From across the plain, a human figure appeared, running with all his strength, waving his arms, shouting words the lions didn't understand, but that made them hesitate. It was Tabo, a young African ranger, just 26 years old, but with half his life spent patrolling this reserve. He wore his dusty khaki uniform, and in his hand burned a red emergency flare he had lit without hesitation. The red glow illuminated his sweat-covered face, and the thick smoke formed a fiery wall between Kessie and the lions. "Back! Get back, damn it!" he yelled, stepping forward, though his heart pounded wildly in his chest. He had no weapon, only the flare and his courage. The lions hesitated. Fire, smoke, shouting. It was enough to make them back off a few meters. Kessie, frozen in terror, stared at the scene with wide, confused eyes. Tabo ran toward him, lifting his free hand in a calming gesture. "Easy, little one. Easy," he murmured, knowing the elephant couldn't understand his words. But somehow, his voice carried something universal: compassion. When he finally reached him, Tabo knelt down and gently tried to push the baby backward, away from danger. But Kessie wouldn't move, paralyzed with shock. Then, out of nowhere, Nuru burst onto the scene like a thunderstorm. Her trumpet shook the ground itself. She charged toward her baby, and the lions, realizing they had lost their chance, retreated with low growls into the dry grass. Dust still hung in the air when Tabo, panting heavily, stepped back. Nuru reached her calf, stroked him with her trunk, then turned her gaze toward the man who had saved him. For a few long seconds, they stared into each other's eyes, mother elephant and young ranger. There was no fear, no distance, only recognition, something ancient, profound, almost spiritual. Tabo slowly lowered the dying flare and whispered, "You're safe now, big girl. It's over." That night, as the sun disappeared behind the Kilimanjaro hills, Tabo stood watch from a distance. He knew Nuru and her herd would regroup, but he also knew the lions might return. He lit a small fire near his observation post and wrote in his logbook, "Today, a baby elephant escaped death. His name is Kessie, and his mother taught me that fear doesn't always conquer love." By morning, the traces of the battle were still visible: scattered tracks, broken branches, stains of dust and blood. But in the distance, Tabo saw something that made him smile: the herd, whole again, moving together, with Kessie trotting beside his mother. The little one lifted his trunk, as if saying goodbye to the man who had saved his life. Tabo raised his hand in return, unaware that this simple gesture would be remembered for years in Amboseli. Months later, when tourists returned after the rainy season, some spoke of a strange sight. They said that sometimes in the golden afternoons, a young elephant would approach the ranger's post. He wouldn't make a sound or beg for food. He would just stand there, staring toward the huts where the rangers slept. And when one of them stepped out, Tabo, the elephant would raise his trunk, let out a soft rumble, and then walk back to his herd.
The local Maasai elders said that animals remember more than we think, that a single act of kindness can echo through time like a sacred drum, and maybe they will.
You're right. Because although Tabo never again faced such a dramatic rescue, his name remained etched in the park's history. And Casey, the little elephant who once defied death, grew into one of the largest and most majestic bulls in Amboseli. They say that even today, when thunder rolls over the plains, he can still be seen walking proudly, a faint scar on his front leg, the mark of that fateful day, stopping for a moment in front of the old ranger post, as if remembering the young African man in a khaki uniform who ran through fire to save his life. And so, among dust and roars, a story was written, not of hunting, but of compassion. Of how, in the wildest heart of Africa, a man and an elephant looked at each other and saw equals.